Yo, yo, yo. What's going on, people? Thank you all for joining. We've got quite a few. Yeah. We've got a little. Let's fix that. Yeah, thanks for joining, man. This has been a long time coming. Zarina has been on this channel before. She was part of our conversation. We had a conversation on, I think it was feminism because she's the rational female. But today we want to speak about the spiritual health of London and to sort of lay the groundwork. Um, Zarina and I met at Speakers Corner, and in the description, I described Speakers Corner as an arena where spiritual battle takes place. And I've got a little clip to show you guys to sort of give you a underground POV of what happens over Speakers Corner. Let me just, yeah, it's quite loud, so speakers, headphones warning.
Why you rape women? Why you rape women? They're scared. They're scared of the Bible. What is wrong with rape? Let them talk. Let them talk. This is the fight of virtue. I'm sorry. This is the fight of virtue. Wait. Read your Bible. لا تحركي لا تحركي ترى شوفوا يدخلون عليه لا تحركي Muhammad sent down that book as well. They're scared. When you read the Bible, in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 20, verse number 34, when you mark up to attack the city, chapter 5, verse 68, say, O people of Scripture, you have nothing, you are not nothing, you are nothing, unless you uphold the Torah and the Gospel. So you have to believe that book according to Allah, that Allah sent down that book.
There's only so much of that I can take. As David Walker says, looks healthy. Yeah, that style of conversation is frequent at Speakers Corner. However, you also do get amazing people that you can have conversation with. And with no further ado, let me bring up my guest, Zarina. Hi, Zarina.
Hello, everybody. Hi. Thank you so much for bringing me on here, Teo. It's always a pleasure to talk to you both online and in person. And yes, for those who don't know, I'm Zarina Macha, aka the Rational Female, and I talk on my channel about the problems of feminism and how it's really destroying gender roles. And this is, video that I put up last night actually, which Teo has watched. In that video, I was talking really about how, because seeing as in this video, you and I are going to be talking about preserving the spiritual health of London, and I would say also mainly the entirety of the West. I think the main thing that we must do really is fight for the preservation of gender roles, and that's something I'd love to talk about with you in this video. We're going to talk about a whole bunch of stuff like gender, sexuality, addiction, and how it all links to spirituality.
Yeah, we'll definitely touch on all those good stuff. But I'm going to steal a question from my favorite podcast, which is called The Sacred. And the question I think will set up a good frame for this conversation. I will answer the question as well, but I want you to go first. And the question is, what is sacred to you?
Well, the word sacred is such a beautiful word because the idea of something being sacred is something that is really, really precious. And actually, I can answer this quite well. So, as you know, Teo, and for those of you who don't know, I am an author. And for me, writing and creativity and music and art, that is probably the most sacred and most precious thing to me. And about 2 months ago, I had a virus on my computer and my hard drive. I took everything off my hard drive and put it onto a USB. And for my writing, I use a program called Scrivener. And unfortunately, some of the files didn't all copy. I don't know what happened. They got lost or they got corrupted, but I lost stories that I wrote when I was younger. And I didn't really properly think about it until I was going through my Scrivener documents and seeing what was there and what wasn't there. And I can't be able to explain how Scrivener works, but effectively, like, the full file, some of them were not there. And I was sitting in the library a couple of days ago, just looking at my computer and thinking about all the stories I lost, and I was really, really distraught. And I remember sitting there, and I was actually felt like drinking, because I used to have an alcohol problem when I was younger. And the reason I felt this way is because writing is such a sacred thing for me. For me, writing and art is sacred. And when something bad happens to something that we consider sacred, we can often feel this desire to act in a very self-destructive way. And I think this is very common with very artistic people, like a lot of writers, artists. Something bad happens to your work, your music, and you feel like, doing drugs or lashing out or even committing suicide. And this is so, so, so dangerous. So that's why I think, and this is why I've become increasingly aware of this year, and something we were taught about in AA, you cannot make something that is from this material world the most sacred thing above all. If I make writing the most sacred, most important thing in my life, that is very, very, very dangerous, because that will then lead me to become obsessed, lead me to become, if anything bad happens to that, oh my God, it's like, oh my God, I want to kill myself. So what we were taught in Alcoholics Anonymous, and what I believe every religion teaches, and what's no doubt you as well, Teo, and most hopefully people watching believe, the most sacred thing in the world is a love of God and a higher power and a connection to the divine. Because when you place that above all else, what that means is that whenever something bad happens or something goes wrong, you can trust that everything is going to be fine. Because if you say, oh, my work is the most sacred thing, or even this person is the most sacred thing, that can all go at any point. Something being sacred has to be something that is beyond this physical world, and it has to be something that is beautiful, balanced, something you can trust and have faith in. And to me, that is God, and that is what God is.
Oh, that's beautifully answered. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Jonathan Pajot, but there was
Yeah,
the Pajot.
is that the psychologist?
He's an artist, orthodox, icon carver, comic book writer.
Oh
Yeah,
no, not.
he's and friends with Jordan Peterson, and it was at the ARC conference that they had in London this past a few weeks ago. And at that conference, Pajot gave a speech that tracks nicely with exactly what you've said, and it's the idea of taking the sacred out of the material and taking the sacred out of also individual gains and looking above, basically. So I think, yeah, that I agree that that is the most sacred, but I'm gonna give a different answer just for variety's sake, and I will say my younger siblings are sacred to me. Um, it's the person that I stole the question from. She describes it as, "What's the thing that you would feel insulted if you were offered a lot of money for?" And that's a good test to see what is sacred to you. And obviously, my siblings are not worth any amount of money, so that's my answer. Um, Going on from there on the sacred theme, the topic is the spiritual assessing the spiritual health of London. How long have you lived in London?
All my life, apart from when I was at university, I was in York for several months, and then I was in Guildford at the Academy of Contemporary Music.
Nice.
Yes, when
And
I was in Guildford, that's when I started going to Alcoholics Anonymous. That completely changed my life. The very first school.
talk to me about your experience of London in terms of the spiritual health of it, as before you went to Guildford and after you came back from university.
I think London is spiritually really, really bad. London is in a state of spiritual bankruptcy. The city is very, 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 very unhealthy. For those who don't know, and I'm going to try and be careful of how deep I go into this, there is a lot of very dark, malevolent practices done in this city. David Icke has spoken about this a lot. My brother is a huge Icke fan, and me and him talk about his videos and his work. And London is obviously a very, very, very old city. There are a lot of things that have been done in this city and to this city to effectively completely mess it up. Symbolic, that is. And I think that a lot of the bad things that have been done in the city, especially over the last few centuries or so, have really polluted the air. I mean, think about the idea of pollution. What is pollution? This idea of very ugly, dark, residual things all being trapped in the air. I had panic attacks for 7 years. I think that stress, anxiety, depression, mental illness, this is what happens. This is the most common thing in big cities. And it's funny because big cities were never supposed to be lived in. You know, a city like London was never supposed to be a place of residence. London was, for a long time, I'm a bit fuzzy on the dates, but for a long time, London was a place of, merchanting. That's where people would come. They come to do business, right? You do your business, you do your trading.
Mhm.
That's what London and that's what cities were for. And, the Bank of England or the Bank of London, like there's this financial financial center in London. It's the Bank of England or the
Yeah.
City of London, the actual City of London, when you have the banks and you have that, there is a lot of, we'll say, very evil stuff that is generated right here in London, where I live, where I was born, where I've lived my entire life. And when there are certain people who are practicing these certain things, spiritually, that is going to have a very bad effect on people. And that is why I say the only way to not get sucked into these dark forces is to, find God. And it's interesting, Teo, that you mentioned the
Hold
most
on.
sacred thing for you.
Let me just like pick up a few things that you put on the table there. You
Yeah.
said there are a lot of dark things, a lot of dark things that's been done in London in the last few years.
Well,
Y-
probably the last several centuries in particular, but if
for
we just
you,
go with the last 100 years alone, I
you
mean,
you mentioned the fact that it is the finance capital of Europe. I would say pretty
oh
much.
yeah.
Because there's so many banks in London everywhere. So are you saying that the spirit of capitalism is that what you're pointing to as being polluting?
Well, people will say capitalism, but see, money is not an inherently bad thing. Generating wealth is not bad. And a lot of people like to blame capitalism. I have these people say this as well, Speaker's Corner. The desire to generate wealth and make money is not a bad thing. Money itself is very, very neutral. Money can be very good and money can also be very bad. It's not really money. It's the fact that these, will say, corporations or financial centers or whatever, they hoard wealth and they use and do certain things to exploit others. And the things that they do are how, that phrase, the rich stay rich, the poor stay poor. That's effectively how they do this. And London is one of the, probably, I would say, one of the places in the entire world where a lot of this stuff happens to such a high extent. And because a lot of people don't really understand this and they don't really understand how to break free from this, they don't know how to effectively get out and to, free themselves. And this doesn't have to be in any dramatic way. Just by, for example, as I was saying, I have a history of, drinking, panic attacks, depression, just by connecting more to God, by praying, by, starting to do, perform acts of love, like do the things that you want to do, doing things that make you happy, striving for good moral character. All of these things can seriously stop you from living a spiritually bankrupt life. And I really do think that the reason why London is so spiritually unhealthy is because people are not living in accordance with their true divine spiritual selves. And this is how the whole system is set up this way. I mean, it's just awful. It's like right from birth, you're shoved into school, which is, I mean, our model of education is still based on the Industrial Revolution. This whole thing of getting people into schools almost like they're in a factory. And basically, like, it's almost like, they get you in, they indoctrinate you, and then you're churned out into an office. I mean, what do most people do in London as well? Like, what is the biggest industry in London? It's finance, it's this very, very data techy, it's like the data techie hub of the world. And a lot of people, especially young men, they, like most men in London, most males in London work in these industries. And, a lot of women do as well, which kind of sucks because most women don't really want to do these jobs, but this is what the world is. It's all based around,
Two
working
things.
in these offices, almost like a prison.
Two things. What I'm hearing you put that, just to put a bow on the finance thing. What I'm getting from that is you're pointing to greed, and you're pointing to I think greed is probably the way I would put it. And there is the spiritual, all those buildings that you see of all those banks serve as temples to greed, is what are you saying? Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, one could say so. Yeah, greed. You think of greed, lust, envy, whatever.
Also, you started speaking about what it is like, so from cradle to grave, the system in which you're encouraged to participate in, and you say that's also spiritually bankrupt,
Oh,
right?
absolutely. Yeah, and that has such a bad effect on people because if people, again, in London, if most young people, because you're in your 20s as well, right?
The final
20s.
stretch.
Well, we're both in our 20s, and it's like most people around our age group, because like I know you, for example, you're very creative. You make documentaries. You get to do like artistic kind of stuff, and being creative as well. Like science is quite a creative thing. Like a lot of people don't understand what it means to be creative. Being creative isn't just limited to art. Like a scientist, science is very creative. Like creativity is innovation, it's imagination, it's the ability to think outside the box and do things. And this is what
Right,
is really being suppressed in the modern West, the death of creativity. Because when people are not able to actually sit down and just create that thing, create systems, create whatever, and everything's kind of thrust onto you in this very very oppressive, almost like this very prison like way, people are going to become spiritually bankrupt. And I think that's why a lot of people in London, why people feel the need to
I'm
do
just gonna
things
push
like
back. Just gonna
binge
push back
drink on the
on that point.
weekends.
I'm gonna push back on that point, the creativity point a little bit. Because I would say London is very creative. London does encourage um creativity. Now, the direction of that creativity that can be questioned, and the sort of agenda that's being pushed in the creative sector that can be questioned. But as far as encouraging creativity, London is, I would say London, along with Manchester, are the two most creative cities that I've been in, and Bristol in England.
Oh, I agree. In terms of, I mean, I'm literally going to a gig tonight. Like, yeah, there's a lot of music, there's a lot of art that goes on here. Of course, one does wonder if there's so much art and creativity, why is our entire city failing? Why is it that most people are broke? Most young people our age can't afford to live alone. Nobody owns their own house. We live in a debt-based economy. It's like you have
I'll
to ask
say
yourself, if you live
because
in a city full of all these creative people, why is our entire city not thriving? Why is everything so ugly? Why are the buildings all so drab? You know what I'm saying?
oh, okay, all right. As far as the buildings go, that no arguments there. All we've got is glass and metal erected all across
Yeah.
London, so no questions. But I would say the answer is creativity does exist, but its direction isn't pointing towards the good, the true, and the beautiful. Let's put it that way. Um,
Amen.
I'll say there's a lot of decadence even in the creativity. There's a lot of just trying to serve one's own ego in the yeah. And I think, okay, let's talk about education for a bit, because you started talking about the the way the education system builds you up into an industrial little NPC, go to work, get a job, all of that. Um, what would you say your education was spiritually bankrupt? Like, did you have RE, for example? What did that do to you?
I really didn't enjoy school. I found it very repetitive. I was very, very good. I was very, very academic, very intelligent, hardworking, but I always scored highly in all my exams. But I didn't like the whole. Most people I know didn't really enjoy school. And when I say I didn't enjoy school, that doesn't mean I didn't have friends or I didn't have happy times. Of course I did. What I mean is that I didn't like the whole idea of school. I thought that school really felt like a prison, and I felt the same way really about university as well. Like all of it seemed really. It all just didn't make sense, and it's like all these systems have just been created to put people in these boxes. Like for example, why is it that we're never taught anything that useful in school? Why are we never taught about how, like, I learned a lot more from reading books. I mean, I see on YouTube as well, a lot of young people talk about this. Like, why don't we never talk, for example, about how to have relationships, how to be a good husband or how to be a good wife, how to raise a family, how to, I don't know, maximize your potential, how to be the best version of yourself, how to actually make money.
That's
We're
exactly what
not taught these things
teach.
at school.
I think the
Right.
schools are teaching well, the culture, I would say, as well as the school is teaching kids how to be the best version of yourself. It's all very me, I. It's all very into it.
Self-centeredness isn't
I
fun.
just want to address this brilliant point. We need bankruptcy because it reveals lies. If we keep in spiritual bankruptcy, then maybe it's because the spiritual world we participate in is really broke.
Well,
Um,
they say in AA, it's only when you hit rock bottom that you go, that you finally connect to the divine. So,
okay. Let me give you sort of my
mission, I think.
so your assessment of London is it's spiritually bankrupt and has been for due
Okay,
to
fine.
actions of hundreds of years, probably centuries long
Yeah,
problem.
just so I say, it's spiritually bankrupt. That's not a term I came up with. That's a very, very, very 12-step term. So I'm just taking it from that.
Oh no, I think it's a good term and fitting term for the way you've described what you see as a spiritual author of London. I see things a little differently. So
Hmm.
the last few months while I was in London, I think I visited at least, I don't know, 10, 15, 20, between 10 and 20 different churches to worship. And it's partly because, again, I'm just assessing what's happening in the church. But also, going to Speaker's Corner has made me aware first of how healthy the Muslim community in London is, and how they're not just how they're thriving in London. Um, the Christians community, so the Church of England is usually like that's what a lot of non-religious people use as the assessment of Christianity in England. But the real growing Christian movements come from immigrants, quite frankly. Similarly to the Muslims, it's immigrants that are, attending mosque, attending churches, going to mass, and so on. So I see in the immigrants, first generation, second generation immigrants, parts of London, it's very spiritually alive. It's almost impossible to find first generation immigrant that's an atheist or even an agnostic, because that's not the reality of the spiritual realm is very alive to you. Africans, islanders, just they come from it. Um, at the same time, there is the narrative is amongst the culture is God is dead. Pretty much, it's we live in a materialistic world, but I see that
Nietzsche.
changing. I see that, yeah, very much the Nietzsche madman in the market thing. But I see going to Speaker's Corner, I see that changing. And I think the last few Saturdays in London and the Free Palestine protest shows there is a spiritual flicker that's getting brighter and brighter. What do you make of that assessment?
I think what it is people are really searching for God because, for example, the UK, so 2000 years ago or so, the UK was a Celtic pagan society. You had those old kind of people, they lived and they did their own old rituals, they prayed to the sun and whatever. They had their whole culture. I mean, this was how the older world was, wasn't it, right? People lived in, in these tribes. And as you mentioned, the African tribes, islanders, India, like a lot of parts of the world, people they follow in these ways. But, Christianity or Catholic Church came along and it burned a lot of the old, ideas, all of the old ways, stopped people from praying to their old gods and goddesses. And, you know, gradually over time, just a lot of things changed. I mean, there are a lot of very, very beautiful things about Christianity. I don't doubt that. Like the idea of love thy neighbor, doing good unto others. Like these are all very positive things about Christianity. And what's happened is that in the UK, it's like, especially the last, we'll say 30 years, spirituality is dead, especially in the UK and the West. It's like this is a completely no, like this was once a Christian society, and yeah, while it had its, not so good aspects of it, there are also good aspects of it as well. And now it's like, now if you and I have completely grown up in this age where, this very secular society. And for a long time, like on my channel, I was saying we need to keep running secular, we need to keep running secular. But now I'm like, no, secularism is actually wrong, because with secularism, that's where you end up with these ideas like individualism, liberalism, and ism. If you look at what the word ism means, it means doctrine. And I think as well, like, there's a difference, because here's the thing: the most important thing in the world is balance. So we're all individuals and we are part of a collective. We all, want to love God and be good people, but we also have bad inside of us. It's like, we all, that beauty cannot exist without ugliness, male cannot exist without female, light cannot exist without dark, like everything is like that. And the way to get the whole is not to just split everything up and say there's good in there and evil there. It's to say we're all good, but we also all, we're perfectly imperfect people. And I think that what's happening now with our generation is a strive to find this. But what concerns me, and I think you sort of alluded to this, is that there's a lot of this kind of new age philosophies that are now being thrust onto people, and most of it seems to be coming from the internet, because the internet is fueled by all of this stuff. Like, a lot of people now, they want to go and find this and find that. And I think this is what happens when you don't have any direction. It's like, I've gone through a huge spiritual transformation in the past year. Huge. I have, like, the things I've experienced, some of them are completely insane. But it's like, thankfully I have someone in my life who has been able to guide me and help, keep me on the straight path and help me from not, completely losing my mind. I'm very, very grateful to him. He is. But, if I didn't have him as someone, I really think that I might have lost him. And, I've been able to do certain things to connect with the deity, to, commune with spirits and angels. And actually, like, while some of some of my head has gone a bit elsewhere, I am in a decent place, on the whole. I have managed to stay on the straight path. And what I think happens is that young people who are searching for spirituality, especially of our generation, unfortunately, I think what happens is that a lot of them do get corrupted by these kind of new age philosophies. And it's strange, because one could say I'm trying to create a new age women's movement, but new age, again, like, new age can be good or it can be bad, right? It's like, if my new age philosophy is ordained by God, it's coming from a place of goodness, a place of light. It's like, I sent you that message, didn't I, saying, oh, a lot of people think that they're doing good things in the world, and they're actually not. How do you know if what you're doing is good or bad? And I suppose the way to know is it coming from God? Are you channeling, goodness, or is it coming from ego? And maybe that's why it's good as well sometimes to check in with yourself, to ask questions. Maybe that's why it's good as well to have a little bit of fear and a little bit of doubt. Because if you're too egotistical, if you're like, I know everything, I know best, I'm right, I'm right, I'm right. And that is exactly what they say in AA. They always say, if you're driven by your ego, and ego can really be represented by the devil, really. I mean, in my tarot deck, ego represents the devil. That is
So
how you end up killing God.
let's take on let's take on ego for a bit, and I think that will allow us to get into other topics that I know you want to get into. First, let me just talk about secularity because you brought it up. I think I've had a different, like, the opposite journey with secularity to you, because I was once of the thought that secularity needs to be gotten rid of because it encourages spiritual bankruptcy. In like, this comment, I think, summed up my feeling on secularity. But now, especially I've been at Speaker's Corner, I'm convinced that secularity is the only, I don't know, worldview that can allow for a space like Speaker's Corner to exist, where you have all these different people of different religious traditions having conversations, and at least expressing what they're freely expressing their version of spirituality. Now, So yeah, I think secularity might be needed, especially for the in a world where people are less likely to talk to someone they disagree with. I think if we get rid of secularity, we're just going to encourage more in-group thinking, and that doesn't sound like a good thing to me. Secondly, getting to the ego thing, there's also atheism. I think is dead because I don't know anyone our age that are 100% atheist. At worst, they're an agnostic,
Yeah, I
and
agree with you.
I don't think that would have been the case 20 years ago. But um, a lot of people are trying to create their own god or
Which is
create their own. Um, John Vivek refers to it as ecology of practice, but most people are not giving it as much thought as John Vivek is giving it. It's just like you said, they find a cool, a nice, interesting video on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, pick your thing, and they start following. They find a guru. They start collecting crystals. Next week,
don't know
so
what they're doing. Yeah,
there is
they don't have any guidance of real
guidance.
guidance.
How do we do that without going back to the old religions? You do have those structures in place where there is a preacher or an imam that you can go to and ask questions for. But nowadays, our generation seems to be getting our answers from Instagram influencers.
Well, that's the problem, isn't it? Because people don't have any guidance, because they don't have any real, like it's like in the old days, for example, your family, your parents or whatever would teach you the spiritual information. I mean, I myself was brought up in a very secular household. Both my mom and dad are, I say, as you say, they're not atheists, but I wasn't raised in a religious household. I'm very, very glad I wasn't raised in a religious household, because I think that I wouldn't have been able to gain the revelations I have if I was raised in a religious household. It's almost like it was all done on purpose. But how should I say this? People do need spiritual guidance, and this is where we have, I mean, Speaker's Corner, as we know, is a very, very destructive place. I mean, I feel like, apart from myself, because I'm obviously, probably I'd say one of the most peaceful speakers there. I mean, my whole message is always, women and men should be respected. We should bring back gender roles. Gender roles are ordained by God. It seems that a lot of the other speakers, they just want to stir up hatred and drama and fuel the fire. And that's what concerns me a lot. And, you say that the reason why we have this going on at Speaker's Corner is because of secularism. Well, that makes me wonder, is this a danger? Because here's the thing, if we had a cohesive society where everybody loved God and everybody was dutiful and kind and following, God, and people, obviously retain their individual personality. I'm not saying we all become a blob or hive mind. That's not what I mean at all. Again, I'm very, very against extremes. I think
Which
we're always really pro balance. I just need to
which
say that
God
for the record.
which God do we all unite over? Because you and I
Well,
both
there
know
is only one. Here's the thing: there is only one God. Like, God is oneness. Like, there is only one God. But you know, like, I pray to a deity. You maybe pray to a deity. Like a lot of the old religions, people pray to deities or whatever. But they're still, your deity is not God. The deities were created by God. But there is just one God, and that is oneness. And there's one God. And for me, God is infinity. God is infinite. God is a very infinite, timeless force of beauty. That the highest force of. If God represents the supreme good, supreme oneness, you know, that is what God is. And it doesn't really matter what, who we choose to worship. What matters is that what we worship effectively is all serving the ultimate supreme goodness. And I don't think that is like, if everybody did that, oh my God, the world would just become so different. If everyone connected to that supreme goodness. But what's happened is, because we've got these systems, and as we link it back to these finance systems, a lot of the world seems to be serving the supreme badness. Because think about it, how is there such a rise in mental illness, depression, relationships breaking down, addiction? How is it everything is all so messed up? This is not a godly society. If it were, the world
question.
would be so thriving.
I've got a question for you because a lot of what you're saying makes me think. I'm just gonna ask the question then. we'll talk about it. Would you rather live? Let me rephrase that. What would be more spiritually healthy for London? London to be a pagan society or a secular society?
Well, I'm going to say a pagan society, but what is pagan? What does pagan mean? Pagan was a word that was invented by the Abrahamic religions. And pagan, isn't really a real thing. Like, because I say I'm a pagan, but it's like, this is just a term. I pray to a goddess,
Okay,
but
so you tell me what pagan means to you. You tell me how you
to
how
me,
you would.
pagan is just a term for a spiritual person who isn't, a Christian, Muslim, or a Jew, really. A person who's not, who doesn't follow the Abrahamic religions. I mean, a lot of people say, oh, Hinduism is a pagan religion, for instance. Like that's really what pagan means. A pagan is just someone who, doesn't follow what they follow. But here's the thing, we all worship God. It doesn't really matter how. It's like if I worship God and a Muslim worship God, I'm not Muslim, but the fact is that we're both still worshiping God. And that's the point. It doesn't really matter. Like, I'm praying to a goddess to connect to God. That is how, I gain my revelations through my goddess. That is why I revere and serve her. Like, that is why I do what I do. It's not because of whatever. And reverence and respect to the divine. I mean, once upon a time, the deities, they were the ones who taught us how to connect to God. I mean, maybe they still are, if we listen and do as we're told. But that's why it's important. And I really do think that people, like, as you said, people are getting information from people on Instagram and gurus who don't know anything. That's not real spirituality. So, for example, I work with crystals, but I have my spirits. Like, my spirits tell me what to do. My angels tell me what to do. Like, I have guidance, and I don't share what I do because for me this is a very private thing. Like, I'm still very new to this. I'm still figuring it all out. I don't think people who would just sit down and go, like, I've seen the amount of influencers on these spiritual influencers on YouTube, the web, the internet. Most of them are fake. But this is I think a lot of them, it's not their fault. It's either they're getting paid to do this, or they themselves have been corrupted by the kind of demonic entities that have been
Or
channeled into the
or
world.
they grew up in a spiritually bankrupt society and are now trying to find something that links them back to the divine somehow, and what they found is that.
Well,
So
there
I
you
do have.
go, Taya. There you go. There you go. That's the problem. And I want to talk a little bit, if it's okay, about relationships, because I was watching this movie earlier this morning called Think Like a Man. It's a really funny movie. I don't know if you've seen it. It's based on this book by Steve Harvey. You're making a funny face. You might have seen it.
Yeah, I've seen
Yeah,
it. But
it's a really
and
funny film. Well, because the thing is, the movie is about relationships, isn't it? Really, what is the biggest problem in the West right now? It's relationships. Like, what is it that has really broken down? Family, marriage, relationships. That's why I'm anti-feminism, because feminism, I always lead with feminism is destroying relationships. When you get rid of relationships, when you say marriage is an oppressive social construct, when you frame male and female as the oppressed and the oppressor, what you're actually doing is you're slowly breaking down society. And really, when people are trying to find spirituality, I think what people are actually trying to do is they're trying to find love. Because a lot of people I've had a cold for the past several days. It's just clearing up. A lot of people, what does everyone want deep down? I think every single person on the planet, apart from psychopaths, wants love. They want to be loved. They want to be in love with somebody. This is a very, 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 very deep desire that everybody has. And everybody desires, true love. Like, this is a thing in every story. And I was watching the movie and I was thinking to myself, it's like Hollywood and the romance industry, they churn out these mass marketed stories. Even myself, like, I've written a bunch of romance stories, but it's like a lot of that, it's not real love. Because think about it, relationships in the West are failing massively. I mean, well, not all of them, but a lot of them, like half of marriages are ending in divorce. This is what happens when you live in a spiritually bankrupt society. But I think the reason why people are trying to find God is because people are really trying to find love. Because if God represents love, and then that symbolically love on earth is transferred to your partner, this idea of having a soulmate, of someone to share your life with, and that's what everyone's looking for. And the problem is people don't know how to do this. People date like, I was watching the film and I was thinking to myself, no, this person shouldn't be with that. They shouldn't be with them. And I was really looking and watching and analyzing and thinking, this guy, I can see him becoming like this. This is what it is. It's like when you lead people away from God and tell people, it's yourself, prioritize your career, it's me, you're leading people into their egos and thus into the devil, effectively, symbolically. And that's when people become confused. And that's why, a lot of relationships become toxic, abusive, codependent. Then people feel the need to spend money on a therapist. People feel the need to go to a 12-step program. This is all what happens when you get rid of God and when you don't teach people how to find love. A lot of people don't even know what true love really means. Love is not looking at someone and going, wow, I love you. Love is, acts of service, acts of devotion. Like when you are devoted to somebody, you will do things for them. Like, I'm so sorry, I keep coughing.
It's all good.
It's just that she just had a cold. Yeah. Sorry, am I talking too much? Or?
No. As you were speaking about love and God being synonymous, I I was thinking of Luke, who who speaks of God in terms of relationship. And I think one of the unique thing about the Christian perspective is its insistence on Trinity, which is a big topic at Speaker's Corner because the Muslims don't like it. But I think what's missed is the point of the Trinity. It's emphasizing the eternal relationship that exists within God, like the love, the triune love that exists between the persons of the Trinity, is I think is a good and poignant expression of the way reality reveals itself, to use some Peugeotian language. And but you were speaking about that in the English, the word love is so overused because we don't really know what love means.
Well, that's what
And
I'm saying, is that there's been a corruption of everything. Everything feels like it's all been corrupted. Because as I was watching this movie, I was thinking, this isn't real love. Like a lot of these relationships, I mean, in the old days as well, people would have arranged marriages because what would happen is that the family, you'd live with your family and then they would look at your temperament or your personality. And, if you think of what your temperament is, oh, thank you. Don't worry, I'm not ill. I'm not that ill. It's just a bit of just recovering from a cold and you have a cough afterwards. But
she's praying from your spiritual health as well as your physical health.
absolutely, thank you. It's always good to pray for others. It's good for you and good for them as well. So yeah, like they would arrange your marriages based on your temperaments as in your personality. Because a lot of people, they'll just date and fall for the wrong person. Because like, I think I said this actually on Miss Pearly Things, that you find someone who matches you. The idea of finding your match, your perfect match, like a lot of people don't even know what even that means. Like someone who matches you means, for example, if you all have a certain set of characteristics, your partner has to have a complementary sense of characteristics. That is why men and women are different. And that is why fixing gender roles and really understanding what gender roles is. It's like, if you think of, for example, a mother and a father, if you think of your father as like your hero, the man who, like my brother said this to me once a while back, actually, he was like, when we were kids, my dad was like a superhero. Your dad is like a hero, a superhero. He comes, he's strong, he can pick you up. And then what is your mother? Your mother is the healer. She heals you, she reads you, she tells you stories, she takes you to nice places. Just thinking about my mom and dad now, actually. Like my parents are separated now, unfortunately. Been separated for like over a decade, but they had a very happy relationship when we were kids. And I think that helped me a lot because it's like that's symbolically what the mother and father are supposed to be. If the father is the savior, the mother is the healer. And that's how a relationship between man and woman is supposed to
Oh,
be.
wait,
A man is supposed to
say that again, slow down. What was that? If the
sorry,
father is
a father or a man is supposed to be the savior, and a mother or a woman is supposed to be the healer. And I think this is really underneath the core tenets, like masculinity and femininity, male and female. When we fix our roles and when we remember that our roles were ordained by God, we remember that men and women are different. That is really going to heal society. I think that is what will bring us back to God. And we can only do this when we remember, that the male and the female are different. And I think that this is actually the root of the problems in society. Because here's the thing, we don't fix it. We can't go out and kill all the elites but we can fix underneath, and we can start by fixing men and women. So I think once we start by fixing men and women, that is gonna, that's how we can start to build society back up. So we have to remember, the way, because most people don't have any idea how to find God. It's like most people are all spiritually confused. So one idea that I've had, one revelation I've had, basically all year is fix gender roles, get men and women to be men and women again, fix masculinity and fix femininity. Remember what the man is supposed to do, what a man's duty is supposed to do, and then likewise what a woman's supposed to do. And once we do that, hopefully that is going to get us back on track, because we can't have a functioning society when men and women don't know their roles. And this is where we have this trans bullshit. Like, the trans bullshit is the most evil, satanic. How can you think that you're in the wrong gender? Sorry, the sound's gone.
Yeah, sorry, I muted myself. I was saying before we get to the trans, let me just engage the gender conversation a little bit, because there is this, even in this little corner, which is what this part of the channel is called. There's an emphasis on marriage, relationship. We're on Jacob's channel right now, and he's one of the people that everything preaches, like, when you get married, find a wife, get married. And a lot of people do see it as the solution to the problem that the West is facing, quote unquote. I'm not super convinced that we can just, if everyone got married, that would be better for
That's
for
not what I said. What I said is we have to fix gender roles, just to cut you, because you're right.
I know
People get married to the wrong person, and that's what's dangerous, because they don't know their role and they don't know their temperaments.
fixing gender role sounds to me like, and I'm not well, I guess I don't know, but it sounds to me like going back to before the, when, I don't know when, but just going back to the point where women stay in the kitchen and men go to work. Is that what you're proposing, or is it more worse than that?
Tayo, have I ever once said that? No. What
That's
gender
something.
roles means, that's what people think, because this has all been corrupted. Gender roles just means a man acting in his natural masculine role as the protector, the provider, the savior, and a woman acting in her natural feminine role as the healer, the nurturer, the carer, the caregiver, the warmer force. That's what gender roles means. It's got nothing to do with men have to, like, in society, people act based on gender roles, and the way those gender roles are used is based on the structure of society and civilization. For example, women can, do certain, like, I've never once said, women can't have a career, for example. What I've said repeatedly is that women typically prefer to do certain things. Most women do not want to do the same sorts of jobs that men want to do. Most women, if a young girl, because I do, like, women obviously are not here to just, women need to have a purpose. Every woman needs a purpose in her life. And for a lot of women, that purpose is raising a family. For a lot of women, that purpose is having a community. Like, what about, why don't we have communities of women coming together? We don't. We have feminists. And feminists are basically trying to break down marriage, break down gender roles, and most importantly, break down men. So this is why it's also dangerous. And, to get society back on track and to restore our spiritual health, we need to save gender roles. We need to remember that men are from Mars and women are from Venus, and teach people what this means. And this doesn't mean, it doesn't mean being oppressed. Like, I actually think it's the opposite. I think when a woman acts like a woman, that's much more freeing. When a man acts like a man, that's much more freeing.
Let me ask this: how can a woman act as a woman if she, let's say, can't give birth? So I want to
That's
not.
not what acting like a woman means.
I know,
It
that's what
means being feminine, in your
what,
feminine energy.
what does that look like? And I'm playing the antagonist role for
I
a
know
reason.
you are. It means having a feminine approach to the world. That's what I mean. That I mean is that as a woman, your approach to the world should largely, if we say like 70% of your approach to the world should be feminine, 30% masculine. With men, 70% of your approach should be masculine, 30% feminine. The reason why it needs a little bit of the other side is because you need that to balance it out, you know. But on the whole, I think women should approach the world in a much more feminine way in every aspect. whether it's, how we deal with people. And, the feminine approach is always a lot softer, a lot more subtle, a lot more psychological. Like women are very, very good at using psychology, emotion, subtlety, even based on things like how we dress, how we make ourselves look. This is all the feminine approach. And this is what has been lost in the same way that the masculine approach has been lost. So that's what I mean when I say acting in our roles. And I also want to mention as well, because, you and I were, sorry,
How does well, no, we've got about I said we'll go 90 minutes. So we've got just under half an hour left. So I was gonna ask, how does, let's say, an OnlyFans model, are they being feminine? Because yeah, that's the question.
Yeah, great question. And that brilliantly ties in what I was going to talk about. So I think that with women, one of the biggest problems in the West with women, and I think this is a big, big, big spiritual problem as well, the misuse of sexuality. This is something which I talk about on my channel. I've talked about it here and there. When you have a society where it's funny actually, because in Act Like a Lady, Think Like a Man, Steve Harvey says, and I've read the book as well, he says, men either view women as either a keeper or a fish. So in the sense that a man views a woman as either a nice girl to bring home to his mother or a girl just to shag for the night. And this is really, really, really dangerous. It's dangerous for men, but it's also dangerous for women. Because if a man views a woman as she's either a nice girlfriend or she's either a thing to have a sleep with, what it means is that, because I think fundamentally regarding sexuality and sex, I think sex should be paired with romance. I don't think people should, have. I don't think casual sex is good for society. I've said this many times. I say this because of personal experience and because of what I've observed. I think sex should be a way to bond with someone and to have a relationship. And I think sex should be paired with romance. And when you have things like OnlyFans, prostitution, pornography, what this is actually is killing off. It's actually harming women, but it's also harming men, which I'm sure you know as well. And I think a lot of young men know this, but they're too afraid to talk about this. Pornography and OnlyFans messes with men psychologically. I've had many conversations with my brother about this. It's very bad for men because, as we know, a man obviously has a higher level of testosterone, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If a man is constantly seeing images of overly naked women, that's not good. A woman is not supposed to be displayed like that at all, because a man feels men feel a very natural attraction to the feminine form. The feminine form is, beautiful by nature. When you have that being exploited in such a disgusting way, where you have girls doing OnlyFans, prostitution, all this, pornography, and it's all over the internet on Instagram. I don't have Instagram, but these apps. You have you go on sites on the internet, for example, it's like Russian girls, and it's just this is not good at all. And to me, I've said this all seems like a big social reaction to the past when women were not able to be as sexual, when women were told you have to be a good girl, and women were made to feel like they had to be a goody two shoes. This is really a very big problem with female sexuality. It's the whole thing of one extreme to the other. And this is what happens when men are taught that a girl is either a wife, good girl, or whatever, a bad girl you just shag for the night. This messes up the way men look at women. And I think the only solution is we have to kill that. And every woman needs to find a resolution within herself and say, no, you're not a goody two shoes, but you're not a bad girl. You're a full feminine woman. And I think this is a really important resolution.
I think few thoughts. Firstly, you said you think sex should be paired with romance. I'm not sure I agree, but I'll get to that in a second. Speaking from the male perspective, you say men are taught to either look at a woman as a shag for the night or someone that potentially you could wife up. I don't know if we're so much we're taught it as much as we were born into the culture where we were born after the sexual revolution, where sex became less sacred, and meaning that sex before marriage was now allowed, not just allowed but encouraged. I think in the previous century it was allowed. In our generation, it was encouraged. It was pretty much you're looked at weirdly if you're the type of person that's quote unquote saving it for marriage. And I think that plays a huge part in the dating mess that we're in right now, where a small percentage of men are benefiting from the sexual markets and everyone else is suffering, including most men and almost all women. So I think that plays a role in it. I think if we tie sex, I think we've already tied sex to romance. The Think Like a Man, that's the book where they had to wait was it 30 days before they could allow the man to sleep with them, and then
90 days.
the
I think
90
that's
days,
very, very, very unhealthy.
because if that's the game we're playing, then okay, I can play the romance game for 90 days, knowing that at the end of it, there's a
Exactly. That's why
big,
it's very unhealthy. That's why I have a video. Can I just say I have a video where I talk about women making men wait for sex? What I mean in the video is that we shouldn't be treating sex like a bargaining chip because, as you said, if a woman says, "Oh, I'm making you wait X amount of days," the man will just pretend to be interested in the woman for sex. That's what I mean. When I say sex should go hand in hand with romance, what I mean is that sex and love naturally go together. And to say this as well regarding waiting until marriage. In the past, people got married at 16, not in their 20s. It was marriages were arranged by your family. You'd meet, but sorry, you'd be arranged by your family or whatever. You go for it, and then when you would meet, like a lot of people would meet on their wedding night and sleep together. That's the first time they would meet. It's like because if you're dating, if you really really like or love someone, you know, when you want to have sex when you meet, like that's just a natural normal human response, right? That's a normal thing. It's not normal to tell somebody repress your desires. What's more natural is your desires are paired together, and what happens is that you would have you see the person, whatever. You would meet the first time you would meet, you marry and you sleep together on your wedding night, and that's when you bond. And that's what they mean by consummating the marriage. Like in a way, like when you have sex with somebody, it is a bonding experience. You are bonding souls with somebody. So, that is a sacred act. And if you've got your partner, your dream partner, whatever, you've never met them or whatever, when you do meet, that is when that act of bonding happens.
would
And
you would you
that's the
concede
marriage.
would you concede though that keeping sex as an activity for only marriage people makes sex more sacred than tying sex to romance?
What I'm trying to say is that marriage, romance, and sex all go together.
But
But
there's a
it's splitting things up that doesn't make sense. Like this idea of courts, like for example, you wouldn't. Again, I'm just trying to think about in the past, regarding like older civilizations. Sorry, I don't know why my light's gone so dark. All of a sudden, it keeps happening
because we
to
get 5 hours of sunlight in the UK. That's why.
I know. But anyway, what I'm trying to say is that how it was that, for example, you raise in your family and the community, and then at the age of, by the time you're 16, the parents find you someone, they match you based on your temperaments, and you'd get the person and you'd see each other together, you think, oh, this person looks nice, the marriage would be arranged, and then people wouldn't meet until it was on their wedding night. So it wasn't like you'd have to be dating someone for 3-4 months, being all sexually frustrated and not being able to sleep together. It was like the sex, the love, and the romance and the marriage was all kind of put together, because it doesn't make sense if two people both like each other and desire each other and they're courting each other. It doesn't make sense to tell them they can't sleep together. That seems very unnatural to me. That seems because that also messes with men's head as well. Because psychologically, men as well desire sex, and that's what happens. Is like when men start to view sex like as almost a form of manipulation, that becomes very frustrating for the man. A man wants to have sex with the girl that he loves, doesn't he? Like, a man who's a naturally good guy, who's naturally a romantic guy, or who's just a good guy. Like, good men don't actually use women for sex. Good men don't pretend to charm women just to sleep with them. Like, good men are not actually like that. It's bad men or men who have ill intentions who are like that. Good guys, in my experience, are generally honest and generally say what they mean. And I don't think good men genuinely want to use women for sex. I think it just happens again when we have a culture that tells men it's okay for sex to mean nothing. For men, if a man can get sex easily, well, he's going to do that, but it doesn't necessarily mean that's what he wants. And that is, again, what happens when you split sex from love and from marriage and from romance, when you just separate everything rather than bringing everything back together. So, and even marriage, like you could say, if two people say are in love and they sleep together and they bond, isn't that marriage in a way? Like in a strange way, because that union, that bond, the loving union, the two souls bond through sex.
I'm going to put a link in the chat very quickly, and there'll be like 20 minutes of people to join in the conversation. But so I on the claim that it's natural to want to sleep with the person you're dating. No argument here.
I don't mean
But
dating. I mean the person that you actually love, that you want to be with. I don't mean just somebody.
yeah, the person that you want to be with. But there's also the euphoria. Like, I'm gonna speak from a man's perspective. Most men, you meet a beautiful woman, there's there's that great joke, and I thought was it super bad. She wants to fuck me. She wants my dick. She wants me. There's this natural reaction of, okay, every girl is a potential place for me to make babies with. But you don't. There's you restrict yourself, and you train yourself to not be a piece of shit that's just lost thirsty after every girl that he sees. And that's part of growing up as a teen. It's probably harder than, in your late teens and early 20s. So I'm saying this to say there's a discipline and taming of a man's sexual nature that needs to happen. And I think that needs to be encouraged more.
I
And
completely agree. And we
we
can
can
only encourage that when we teach men to love God, and when we stop exploiting male sexuality by bombarding men with images of pornographic women.
Okay, so let's stick on that love God part, because that's where we started. You said the most sacred thing is the love of God and looking above and gazing above and not focusing on the material and not focusing on the thing. I think that same thing applies to sex before marriage. It's this sacrificing your fleshy nature for a higher purpose of, okay, we are making this commitment together, that we are saving ourselves until we make a commitment before others and God. Then it's official. Then there's no going back. At that point, then the bond is there, and then sex can be what actually you can use sex to consummate the marriage. And I think I still have the message start. Dali made this important point of, I think it's good to keep in mind that sex makes babies. Yes, until the 60s, everyone knew that sex made babies, and then
I
we
think condoms
technological
existed as well, and people use
exactly.
like pull-out methods and all that.
And I think that made sex a lot less sacred. But yeah, I'm gonna put the link in the chat. We've got 20 minutes or so if anyone wants to join. Just to tie it back to the spiritual health of London, assessing it. I'm not. I see everything you see. I see the sexual debauchery. I see the greed manifested in the giant banks, that's ugly buildings in London. I see the selfishness that, don't think we touch on it, but that's part of something that up north London is known for. It's no one says it, no one says thank you, no one looks at you. Everyone's just go, 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 go. So I see a lot of that. But I also do see the people like yourself, people like myself, who are seeking the idea of there not being a God is not even up for consideration. And I think as long as there are people seeking, um, blessed are those who seek and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. And I think if you're earnestly seeking, I believe you will end up on the path to Christ. But that's what I think. Thank you so much for joining, Zarina, man. This has been so much fun. I think we've got a lot more. There's a lot more meat on this bone, obviously. I don't think
We can do a part two.
in London in an hour. But yeah, for part two, you let me know when you're available. Let me see if anyone's gone. Is anyone joined? No, we're good. Did I even post a chat link? I don't think I did I? My bad. Sorry, lads. Sorry, guys. Now I've posted the link.
I mean, it really is. When we move society away from God, that's when really society crumbles. If everyone as you said, could find and seek earnestly a path to connect to God and to connect to the divine. I think after that, everything would fall into place. Love, sex, marriage, men and women acting like their natural roles, people being able to pursue things they care about rather than working some bullshit office job with some shitty corporation. I really do think this could help to fix society and get people back on track.
I think we need to talk a lot more about the correlation between gender roles and spirituality. I think you've done a lot of work on gender roles, and I think we can link that back to fixing spirituality, because I see the connection is there, but I don't quite know how it connects, if that makes sense.
So what I mean is that gender roles are ordained by God in the sense that God created man and woman, right? Man and woman, male and female, masculine and feminine, yin and yang. Like this is what God created man and woman.
Mm-hmm.
And we're made, everything about a man and a woman is made to perfectly go together. And when a man is acting in his masculine energy, like masculine energy, that's a spiritual, masculinity is a spiritual force. It's not like, this isn't a material force, this is a spiritual force. The masculine
I don't want to get you in
is different
trouble.
from the feminine spirit.
I don't want to get you in trouble, but I think this question tracks with what you're saying. How does homosexual relationship link into gender roles and people playing their gender roles?
Even in homosexual relationships, there's usually one person who's slightly more masculine and one person who's slightly more feminine. I want to be absolutely clear as well, so the world knows this. As I've said many times, I'm completely and utterly not against homosexuality. I have nothing against gay people being in love. I think that gay relationships are a beautiful thing. I've got gay friends. My concern, as with many concerns, is the LGBT political woke transgender ideology that is destroying families. And there's a big difference between two men who meet and love each other and want to be together and fine, want to get married. That is not the same as saying men can take hormones and be women.
No, it is not the same.
And I think that is where we draw the line. And it's also not the same as teaching young children that, I mean, you probably saw this in the video yesterday. My brother literally said to me, "Oh, Zarina, I was in the fucking barbershop and someone was saying a primary school teacher was reading a story about a teddy bear who's like, I was a boy, now I think I'm a girl." This is where society is being destroyed.
UK. Was that in the UK?
It was in a school here.
Well, go on, David.
Hey,
hello.
Can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear, bud.
Hi there.
Okay.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. I won't take too much time. I was just gonna add a comment maybe or a question. But like the idea, I don't know why my camera's not working, it makes no sense. But this kind of idea of like returning to traditional gender roles, like I know in America, especially with women, is like I'm not trying to bash women at all. I just know, like, I have a lot of female family members, all that sort of stuff. So I kind of get to hear it firsthand. And it's like, that's so far beyond what they're even interested in that it's like, I don't know. I just see a lot of like, oh, return to traditional gender roles. And it's mostly men just complaining to other men, or even like women kind of talking to men to like pump them up. But there's no, like, if you ever actually attempt to talk to other women, and the reason I say American is like America's always kind of been culturally a little bit more gender neutral in a way. I think just because of like the rural background of things.
Like that since feminism. It hasn't been. It's only been like that since the 1960s. Feminism.
No, I don't think so. Women have always worked on the farm besides men. That's why you have like, Amelia Earhart and stuff like that. Like that's.
A lot of people don't understand what gender roles means. Gender roles does not mean that women can't work. That's not what gender roles means. I've never ever once said women can't work. But people watching this won't understand, and a lot of women think that gender roles means, oh, what, so I can't have a job. Women have always worked throughout history. That's not gender neutral. Women have always worked alongside their husbands in the fields and the farms. That's not gender neutral. A woman can work and still be a feminine woman.
I think just to fleshing out what David was pointing to is I've seen you speak to a lot of, as Speakers Corner, for example, your message is received overwhelmingly positively by men.
I know.
Whereas,
Yeah, and that's kind
with
of where it's
women,
like, have you tried to reach out to women? Because I find even it kind of pointing exactly to what you say, like, no, gender roles does not mean you don't have a job. Like you said, that's always been part of history. But there's a lot of like really, really hostile pushback to even kind of trying to bring that up. And one more point I'll
All
make, and then
because of
I'll let it
feminism.
go, is like something I've started to notice, and I'm kind of like in a phase, so whatever. But like one thing I've definitely noticed is like the women that are in church are typically by nature almost more masculine, and like there's something about it that like the men that come to church are then also more feminine. Like there's something in the Christian pattern that kind of subverts and perverts women role or gender roles, I meant. And so like the most like feminine women I know are definitely not Christian women. And I think like one thing I kind of wrestle with is like, are we trying to save something that is like inherently doing this to us? So I don't know.
Yeah, gender roles means, as I said earlier, men and women are different. And there are definitely dark forces in this realm that are effectively trying to destroy that. That's why we have men behaving in a more feminine way and women behaving more masculine way. That's why feminists will say men should show their feelings more and women should take on men's roles. What gender roles means really is a man is mainly acting and living in his masculine energy, and a woman is mainly acting and living in her feminine energy. It does not mean that a woman is a doormat who doesn't speak. It does not mean that a woman is chained to the kitchen sink. Nor does it mean that a man has to be a he-man.
Yeah,
of
and I
allowing
100% agree. I think what I noticed is what I'm saying is
who
like,
actually thinks about it agrees with me.
yeah, because I think what I noticed though is that Christianity, a lot of times, you either get these like really masculine, kind of female led churches with like really feminine men, or you get that kind of overreaction of the 50s where it's like every man is He Man and every girl is like Victorian Barbie that shuts her mouth or whatever.
Because of a lot of balance. Because as well, the Christian church as well has been corrupted. Everything has been corrupted. Spirituality, this is what happens when you corrupt society and you move people away from really finding, really connecting to God and really connecting to the divine. And that's what I'm saying. The key to the divine is balance. And balance is the resolution. The balance between masculine and feminine,
I
light
think
and
balance
dark.
is a myth, but we'll have that about live stream at a different time. Cassandra, Chad, thanks for joining.
Hey, happy
Hello everybody.
Friday! Woo!
Happy Black Friday.
Go get your big screen TVs and stuff, guys. There's some good deals.
Good old materialism.
I had a question from what you were talking about, bringing gender roles back to society, but not necessarily the kind of strict ones you said. So I was wondering, in modern society, in what ways are women not, conforming to regular gender roles in the workspace or just in life?
So, for example, in the West, most women have to work 9 to 5 jobs. And a lot of women, especially young women of, say, mine or our generation, in their 20s and 30s, are struggling with severe mental illness and medical conditions. And this is very stressful because for the vast majority of women, this whole environment of being told to put your career first, your education first, is actually teaching women to go against her natural inclination. Because a woman's natural inclination is to be in love with a man and to be cared for by a man. And I believe that women are actually our best selves when we have a strong, dominant male partner. And I think that a lot of women would then, if they had like a strong, dominant male partner, they would then be able to explore things they want to do. For example, women usually want to do more creative things. Like women are typically more interested in the arts. They're more interested in, baking, sewing, music, dancing, or I don't know, ballet. and women as well who do want to do the sciences at the same time. Like I'm not saying women can't do science or can't do that. I'm simply explaining that women have an inclination towards certain things, and I think that women will be able to thrive and do these things much better when women effectively have, the love of a strong male man. And the only way we can do this is by making men masculine again, which is by getting rid of feminism. So it doesn't surprise me that my message is largely my audience, people who listen to me at present are largely men. So I think that it's really by fixing men. Once men become masculine again, women will fall in line, because I think that is our natural inclination, is that once you fix men will help women, because women as well are attracted to men who are dominant and masculine by default. Women are not attracted to men who are afraid. And I don't mean afraid like everyone's got fear. I mean as in a woman is not going to want to go with a man who doesn't look like he can handle himself. And a lot of young men can't handle themselves because a lot of them are suffering from mental illnesses and on medication. And that's because we have, the spiritual bankruptcy. We have all of this evil stuff polluting the air and messing people up, and men committing suicide and all this horrible stuff.
I've thought before that, I guess, feminism kind of came up, I think maybe because of not as good leadership from men.
Well, it was really a female supremacist movement. It was really, feminism is effectively the direct result of women being very, very irrational. Because when women become very irrational and are too emotional, that's when, because women are more emotional than men by nature. I think that feminism is the result of women being very frustrated and angry. And instead of sitting down and being rational, level-headed, they kind of chose to take it out on society. Like if you look at the first wave feminists, for example, the first wave American feminists like Elizabeth Cady Stanton or Lucretia Mott, these were very, very, very angry women, very bitter women. And they really just wanted to break down society. It's like, this is what women do. When women are very emotional and they haven't had that chance to have that emotion tempered, they will act in these very irrational ways. And that's where we end up with these gynocentric ideologies like feminism, which is very, very dangerous. Because, I don't think we shouldn't be living in a female like, if women ruled the world would be destroyed. This is what happens when you give women too much power and you let women be in charge. You end up with, now this trans rubbish. This is not right. We need strong men to be in charge, good, strong men, and for women to then have their place in society in a very positive way, where they can actually be women and not be stressed and anxious and frustrated and tired all the time and drinking alcohol. And
I just want to, I've got,
we give all that stress to men then.
Yeah, men are built to take on that stress. That's the point. But that's what men are built to. Men are by default are built to take on the pressures of the world.
I was thinking about
Luke's training for it.
This topic in general. First of all, Luke is probably the most masculine / feminine being in this whole video. So,
Thanks.
but sometimes I used to really love these conversations, by the way. Like I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, back when this stuff was first kind of being called out publicly and nobody was listening. Like maybe 5 years ago. Shit. Well, anyways, what I think today is kind of like talking about these topics is like talking about, like the conservative, like trying to bring back the conservative. It's like, there are no conservatives anymore. They just because there's nothing to conserve. So in this way, I'm thinking about the conversation around masculine versus femininity and all that stuff. Like we're actually talking in a feminine medium right now, which is the internet. And it's a place where I think it's actually hyper feminized, because you can't if Luke says some bullshit to me, I can't just go over there and smack him in the mouth, right? It's like I have to drive to Minnesota and so instead, and plus we all like status, let's just face it. So the conversation, I think it's honest. If we're really honest with ourselves, this is a conversation about status. Because it's not a real topic. I don't think it is. And like, and if it is a real topic, I'd like to hear some actual solutions. Like, well, then how do you tell a convincing story to people who have a million stories that are just super shiny and compelling? And like, this is just a status game we're playing if we're real about it. And sorry to squash your guys' topic. I actually didn't listen. I was just making my public apology video. Go check that out. That's over on the Friday Morning Nameless. And
I can subscribe to the Friday Morning Nameless.
yeah, like, comment, subscribe. Anyways, I hate to. Sorry. It's something that I think these aren't useful conversations in the way that we're having them. I was talking with my wife yesterday. She sponsors a lot of women in Alcoholics Anonymous, and she was saying that, like she said, it's weird. I get a lot of calls from women who have a lot of problems with their mothers. They have real bad relationships with their mothers, and she's like, maybe it's just all women have problems with their mothers, basically. And I was like, maybe, but I said, maybe it's that you actually have more of a proper relationship with actual feminism, which is just like having matriarch-like qualities. And maybe these women grew up in a society where their mothers had hyper feminized liberation thinking, which is it in some sense, some of that is good, but after a while it stacks, and after it's stacking, we get into all these little categorical spaces, and we all become more and more separated, and we can only talk to each other and like make all these weird accusations to each other with no consequence, no real consequences other than reputation assassination and things like this. So I'll shut up now, but I do appreciate you coming and talking, because this is great that we're trying something. But I would like the conversation to be more about how do we actually contribute to a real life solutions. Pass.
Dali.
I just want to say, Chad, I'm glad you're here. Very glad. And I'm glad for each one of you. And I just want to say, Luke, I hope that you're breathing in between. That looks so intense. But anyway, Cassandra, finally, you are a braver person than me. And Zarina, you are such a strong speaker. My goodness. I don't know where you get that confidence from, but wow. Teo, I just want to say, anyway, I bless you all, and I don't have anything to add at this point, but I think it's a really good thing that a lot more people join into this conversation, because I think that's important, and more of that does need to start happening, because it's like there's not much to like find in terms of answers or solutions or things. Those things, it seems like those need to be sort of created or discovered together, not each individually or opposing one another. And well, at least for me, I'm basically clueless. I wouldn't know what to say, but I'm learning from listening to everyone giving and piecing things together. And I think that's a great way to live, learn, and grow. Anyway, I'm going to keep quiet now, because I think that I am better at listening, because I feel really shy right now. Okay. I'm going to shut up.
No, thank you so much, Elena. I agree with you. I am so grateful for every single one of you, both on the screen and those in the chats, because we do make sense together. If it was just me and my thoughts, I would be more wrong than I would be. If it was just Zarina and I, I'll be a little more right. But with everyone here participating, it gives me a better chance at being able to guess what elephant actually looks like. There's about a minute left, Luke.
A minute. Is my audio terrible?
No, go, Luke, go. Okay. We can hear you.
Okay. Man, there's a lot. As usual, I'm thinking of these things in terms of a mosaic. There's all these touch points, because I would say if you're just thinking about these things in a well, solipsism is a myth. I think it's an illusion. And so there isn't such a thing because no man is an island. And so that means it is the medium and the message. The space informs what manifests in the space. The womb manifests what is created in the womb. And so, like, I would say the space and setting the space and defining the parameters of hospitality implicitly is the role of the feminine. And then the masculine, it's like the man is the head, the woman is the neck. You're not going to see where the neck doesn't want you to see. It just ain't going to happen. And so there's a lot of this. You can have this false solipsistic reciprocal narrowing to bring in Vervaeke, or you can have a true communal reciprocal opening, which allows you to see what you may not want to see, which is where the right brain is the master and not your left brain. And ultimately, the simplest way to say it is it's God and mammon. You cannot serve God and mammon. In your pursuit of femininity, if you're doing it in a mammonistic way, seeking control out of fear and anxiety, it ain't gonna work. The Tao, man, it will come back at you in an unbelievable chaos that you are not prepared for. And the same thing is true in a hypermasculinity. I would posit, Chad, I don't know what you think about this, because you were saying this is all feminine. I really like what Tyler Anderson said a long time ago in the early Bridges Discord days. And he said most modern churches, and I think this is the world, honestly, due to liberalism and the Western expansion and colonization of the world, at least culturally, at least the modern technocratic world. The space is, I would say it's a masculine space using feminine language. And so it's this hyper masculine space where you exclude people based on categories of self-identity, which is fundamentally antichrist. That's the chaos that's gonna eat you up, because those are the people that allow you to see what you don't see. If you exclude the heretic, you're screwed. And that's what the modern world does. That's what identitarianism is. It's insanity. Okay, that's what I got.
No, I agree
And
because
you can't even talk about this stuff like what you were saying. I wouldn't have been able to say what I just said if I hadn't been talking to everybody in this space for the last 5-6 years. There's no way.
right. Yeah,
And most people won't even know what I'm talking about or think I'm crazy.
there's a type of
No ways.
there's like the type of like this aloof invasion that the this medium, like you said, is a masculine medium, but feminine agent. Yeah. So the arena is masculine and the agent is feminine. Yeah, because it's like it's like the protesters who go on the street, right? Kind of, right? That's really that's a hyper feminized, like I'm gonna say something and get away with it. You're not gonna do anything about it. Like, I'm a woman, you can't hit me, right? It's kind of like that, that idea. And that's what this is like. I'm a woman, you can't hit me, but I'll just spit in your face, and I'll keep spitting in your face, and you can't, you know. And so it's like, it's gross. And the church that I attend, though, is, I would say it's proper. It feels properly balanced, but that's also because there's like 80% of the congregation is 70 years old. They have, that's why I like it, because they're modeling an example of what I think it means to act in a proper way in a society. And yeah, I'll shut up now. Sorry.
We've
Thank you
run.
for the track, Teo. I believe I have to get going now.
Yeah, Zarina, I know you've got gigs to get to. Thank you so much for being here. I'll keep this on going for
Thank
the randos if people want. But Zarina, thank you so much, and we'll speak later.
Blessings to all of you.
Well
and thank
done.
you for listening. It was very fun. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Bye. Keep well.
Yeah, bye.
I'm also gonna hop off. So peace and love and everything that you need to you. Ciao. See you guys soon. Okay, how do I exit this thing?
It looks to Wakanda forever. And in South Africa, it's not Wakanda.
So
David, I've got so many of your comments starred, but I couldn't because you were dropping gems in the chat, bro. Thank you so much for interacting.
Hey, I
Chad,
always try.
I appreciate you joining on, man. I never know whether I'm just gonna be me, myself, and I on this stream, so it's always when people jump on.
yeah, no, it's good. I wasn't sure if it was a recording or a live thing. So like, I love when you bring on guests because like we need more outside of the corner guests, and you seem to provide most of them on this channel, which is good.
Yeah, and testimonially too.
Yes. Yeah.
I think
to see
new
you do.
fresh salt water. We need new mixture all the time, don't we?
Could you do a live randos live from Speaker's Corner? Is that possible?
I could do not for very long, but I could do for at least an hour or so. I think I've thought about it. The problem is that London get like 3 hours of sunlight, so after an hour or two, you can't see anyone because it's so dark. But also, it would be I would need someone else with me to watch the equipment while I'm doing the interview or conversations.
Yeah.
Well, to plug my recent video, all the light you cannot see is the most important light. So there you go. Also, if you want a chemistry lesson, I unintentionally gave a chemistry lesson.
Sweet. Is it how to grow a sharp? Is that the chemistry lesson? Because I need to know. I don't have one. See,
my brothers-in-law just saw me out of the corner of a FaceTime video yesterday for Thanksgiving, and then proceeded to just laugh hysterically for about 5 minutes, having seen my face. So that made me feel really secure and confident.
Yeah. You see how feminine energy begets feminine energy.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I grow a mustache, and they think like it makes me look like more of a wuss.
That's because you live culture.
If anyone I know didn't have that mustache and they showed up with it, I too would laugh for a good, I don't know how long.
Oh man. It's my incognito. I'm going undercover as my father.
If you take that mustache off, he actually looks exactly like this.
Just Mr. Potato Head.
Well, I love you guys. I get in and spend some time with my wife.
Thanks, Chad.
Thanks, Dad.
Bye, Chad.
Well, guys, I'm gonna end this stream. Thank you everyone for watching. Thank you for those that came on and participate. There will be another stream. I don't know when, but thank you all. God bless.
Yes, sir.